All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Alpha Obeisance channel. I'm to the point, I'll be honest with y'all, I don't know where to start these videos anymore, and full disclosure, full transparency, this is going to be another long-winded Linux talk. If you ain't got time, I totally get it. I appreciate you stopping by. As for the rest of you guys, you're probably going to stick around because you like Linux, or maybe you're curious about Linux and you're looking to get into it. I talk about Linux throughout all of my videos. It's just what I do. Primarily focusing lately on building my first home lab environment. So maybe you're building your first server, you're building your own environment to start self-hosting. You want to have your own, private media streaming service like Netflix, or you want to have your own Git server for storing all your own projects, or what have you. You just want to start self-hosting all of your own services. Well, welcome. Maybe you find this interesting. I'm learning as I go. And I've made quite a bit of progress. I started with, I bought a PowerEdge R730 XD on Amazon for something like 850 bucks. It came with 128 gigs of RAM, 2 Xeon processors. You can see here it's got the E5 2680x2 at 3.3 gigahertz. This was one of the big selling points for me, is that it had two processors, not just one, but it had both of them in it. And they were both over 3.0. That was a huge thing for me. We've since bumped it up to 220 gigs of RAM, and it came with something like 32 terabytes worth of storage, and I've since bumped that up to something like 100 something. I don't remember. I bought 3 Iron Wolf 24 terabyte hard drives, and it cost me 1,800 bucks. I am still feeling that pain in my soul, but thankfully, hopefully it'll last me a while until I can continue to upgrade, because I've got 6 more bays to be dropping storage into. I digress. We started out with ESXi, which is VMware, until I realized that VMware was acquired by Broadcom and they're going to be deploying a subscription-based model for their services. Therefore, I said hasta la vista, and thanks to you guys who follow my page, I have switched to Proxmox. That was a bit of a journey, a bit of a recap on that. I know, guys, I'm getting redundant here, but I'm just trying to welcome the new users. I got the idea I wanted to install Proxmox on an M.2 SSD. Well, the only way to do that with the PowerEdge R730 XD is to implement a PCIe or HBA so that I could plug in the M.2 drive. And everything went fine. Installation of Proxmox went fine, but the PowerEdge R730 and R730 XD do not have, for whatever reason, in Dell's infinite wisdom, they have not released a firmware update that enables booting from PCIe. So I had to find a third-party grub loader called Clover Bootloader, I think it was. Created a bootable USB, installed it internally so that we could boot into Proxmox. So here we are. I finally figured it out. I've had a couple weeks to learn how to use Proxmox. I had rather limited experience with ESXi. I've been using VMware Workstation for many years, but I'd never had experience with ESXi or VMware Sphere or anything like that. Very limited experience. So when I came to Proxmox, it was my go-to choice because it is a Debian-based hypervisor, and it's just been fantastic. It was very easy for me to learn because not only can I manage the system via a terminal without issues. We'll go ahead and close this out. It's just been fantastic to learn. The front end, the web UI was a little bit different. The dashboard was a little bit different to get used to, but for the most part, it went without a hitch. Once I learned how to use like pools, I didn't know much about pools, organizing my VMs or anything like that. I learned how to create pools so I could assign virtual machines upon creation to certain pools, which just helps you keep your server organized, and it made my life so much easier. And at the time that I first started using Proxmox, I was the only user, but I have since created users for like my father-in-law, who's trying to get into learning to use Linux and systems administration, much like myself. He's been a huge help in a lot of these projects. So I granted him access. I granted another friend of mine that's trying to learn how to use Linux as a desktop while he's trying to learn Python. So I've created a virtual machine for him to remote in and dilly-dally on. So then I started learning about Proxmox groups, users, permissions, and so on and so forth. These are all fantastic. if you're getting into Proxmox, you've never used it before, you're getting into home lab environments and this is the route you choose to go, definitely take your time to learn. Because when I first jumped in here, I was all about just creating my virtual machines, getting everything back up and running. I was all hasty about it, and I have restructured my entire system twice now, and it's a lot of work to do that, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Like, if you know how to go to a terminal and remote into your Proxmox server and like reassign virtual machine IDs and all of this stuff and assign them to different pools from a CLI, might not take that long. But for me, I was stuck with, like, if I wanted to reassign virtual machine IDs, I basically had to shut all the servers down, clone all the servers with the new virtual machine ID, and then delete all of the old servers. And I've had to do that twice because I have restructured, you know, every time I learn something new, I restructured it. But thankfully, now I think I've got everything squared away, at least my understanding of managing the Proxmox environment. I think I've got it down to a system at this point. So it was a big pain in the butt. Take your time to understand how pools work, and then if you're going to have additional users coming in, definitely look into groups. If you're going to have multiple users with, you know, mutual permissions, get into groups. Or if it's just going to be one or two individuals that are going to be using your server, just look into permissions for your users. That way you don't grant them full access. No one really needs full access aside of you, but you can still have admins and so on and so forth. You can enable two-factor authentication. Of course, we've got API tokens and all of this stuff. You can do HA. I don't do any of this stuff because I don't really know anything. I'm still learning about all of this stuff and what it does. I don't know what HA is, or fencing, zones. I'm assuming this network, IPAM. Of course, our firewall. I do know that. The list goes on. So, that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at how I got my server structured here. I do everything alphabetically so I can keep it organized the way that I want it, and I do that by having my own category. Since I don't have solid networking understanding yet, I'm having troubles getting my domain that I had purchased for this server to work the way that I want it to. I basically want to build a I don't know what you'd call it, maybe a web portal that when you go to my domain, it prompts you with a login, and then after logging in, it presents you with a web page for navigating all of my services, whether it's my GitT server or my Mattermost server, my Jellyfin server, my Nextcloud server. I just want a landing page that requires login prior to using it. And I don't know how to do all of that yet. You can see here in staging, I've got an Nginx VM that's waiting to be set up, but I've just been really struggling with comprehending the networking side of things so that I can get Nginx to basically, when someone calls my domain, it sends it to my public IP, which then goes to Nginx as a reverse proxy, sending information back appropriately. This is great for load balancing, security, and so on and so forth. But for whatever reason, I've really struggled with trying to understand how to get Nginx configured to do that. It's incredibly frustrating, but I'll get there eventually. It's really important that I get that squared away because right now, my domain points to my Nextcloud server. Having my own personal cloud storage was important to me because after my mom passed away of cancer 2 years ago, I was the one that backed up all of her data, and I wanted to create a self-hosted cloud server that I could enable all of my family to basically remote in and see all of her pictures or watch all of her videos without actually having to download all of that data onto their own hard drives, because it's a lot. She had a lot of pictures, a lot of videos, and I figure it's just easier for me to do all of this and then give them a login, some login information, and they could go to my website and see it. So it's working right now for all intents and purposes, but I would really like to have a domain that offers navigation between all of my services. I just don't know how to do that yet. So moving on, we've got different services, like a personal area for my friends that are trying to learn it. We've got our game servers. This was quite an experience because my father-in-law wanted to learn how to deploy Conan Exiles on Fedora. And the Conan Exiles wiki only gives information on how to deploy a Conan Exiles dedicated server for Ubuntu. Of course, everybody does Ubuntu. I don't understand it. It's 2024. Let's use Fedora. But I digress. Ubuntu's great. There's tons of support. Makes it super easy, usually, unless it's Conan Exiles, and then it's still a pain in the ass because they refuse to release Linux binaries. But I digress. He spent about a week and a half getting a Conan Exiles dedicated server up and running on Fedora. We are actually working on a guide on how to do that. So if you guys are gamers and you want to create your own dedicated server for Conan Exiles on Fedora, we're going to release that once we get it done, and probably do it in the Steam guides section for Conan. The rest of these are servers that I have set up, and I am lazy beyond belief. So I use something, if you're looking into getting into hosting your own dedicated game servers on Linux, I definitely encourage you to check out Linux Game Server Managers. Now, hopefully my internet's going to cooperate. It's been spotty all day, but here we are. You go to Linux Game Server Managers, and they've got a laundry list of games here that somebody on their team has created an automated installation script for the dedicated server tool for any given game. For example, if we scroll in here, we got TeamSpeak. I've used that one. Where's Paper MC? I'll use that as an example because it's really easy. So you go in, you click your game. It tells you, okay, we've only configured these installation scripts for these distributions. I don't understand why they put Ubuntu in here instead of just Debian. It's pretty much the same damn thing. Again, CentOS, like that's dated. It's not even good anymore. Like, let's update that for Fedora, guys. Like, anyway, they're still incredibly useful. You go into dependencies, they give you scripts if you're running any of these 3 distributions to install all of the dependencies. If you're running, say, Arch Linux like I used to, and you still want to use Linux Game Server Manager, it's going to require a lot of manual updating and management, but you can install all of the dependencies by just copying all of these dependencies and then installing them through Yay. Then you proceed to the install section, and it gives you installation. You add your user, you switch to user, you curl the installation script, and then you execute it. And it executes an automated installation script. It deals with Steam CMD. It downloads all of the server files. And then they even have documentation that teaches you how to set up like your server properties and stuff. So it's an incredibly useful organization. This Linux Game Server Linux Game Server Managers group is just fantastic. Last but not least, they give you basic usage on how to start it, how to stop it, how to restart it. I always make a list of aliases specific to each game that just allows me to do all of this by like start, stop, restart. And so on and so forth. And then at the bottom, they give you cron jobs so that you can make sure that your server is always running and up to date. So definitely check that out if you're wanting to get into hosting your own dedicated game servers. Odds are they've probably got your game on the list. If not, they do take requests. And if they get enough requests for a certain game, they typically deploy them rather quickly. Someone jumps on it. For example, Pal World came out, and within like a matter of days, they had a Pal World script set up through Linux Game Server Manager that allows us to run our Pal World servers at the click of a button. So yeah, that's pretty much how my Proxmox experience has gone. I hope this was a little more in-depth than my last video. I'm gonna try and wrap it up here so I don't keep you guys here all day every day. Big shout out to all the new viewers and all the new subscribers and followers. I appreciate you guys who've been dropping comments. I appreciate that. Hopefully you guys can see all of my text and stuff now. I had someone that did not like that my text was so small, and I understand that I'm uploading these videos in 2.5K. So yeah, my text can be rather tiny on smaller resolution. So I apologize for that. I'll try and keep my texts up and visible from now on so that you guys can see everything, and we'll go from there. Anyway, I love you guys. I appreciate all the love and support. I continue to learn. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections definitely drop them in the comments section below. Smack that like button if you liked the video, found it useful, or at the very least entertaining. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider subscribing. I tried to post updates as I learn things, and the next update will probably be in regards to Engine X, because that is my highest priority right now. I've just got to get that running. So, all right, y'all, have a great week, and we'll catch you in the next one.